Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show, and welcome to this amazing episode, which I think you will remember for many, many reasons. And that's because our special guest is the one and only Ron White, two-time U.S. memory champion. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Ron, welcome to the Massimo Show.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm excited about it. We have a mutual friend who made the introduction, Michelle. I researched your show and what you do here, and you got a lot of great things going on, and it's just an honor to be included. So thank you.
Well, it's certainly our honor to have you included for a variety of reasons, which we'll get into. So, Ron, first, we'll dig into you. Who is Ron White? And then we're going to talk about your specialty, your skill set, and share with the audience how they can leverage your expertise, and then share with them some of the value and how they can build their memories to help them along their paths and their own personal journeys. So, Ron, if we may, I'm going to dig deep first and say, who was Ron White as a teenager? What was his life like? Where was he living? What is your background?
I live in Fort Worth, Texas right now. I live downtown. I was born about a mile from where I am currently standing, from where I live. And I grew up maybe 15 miles from Fort Worth. Now, that may sound like I've lived my entire life in a 15-mile radius circle, but I haven't. I've lived all over in Houston and North Carolina and Seattle and traveled quite a bit. But Fort Worth area is my home. Growing up as a kid, I was a good student, but I was also somewhat of an introvert, which I am now. I didn't have a lot of friends, but I had a core group of 5 or 6 friends, which are still my best friends to this day as I approach age 50. We see each other a couple times a month and we take trips together. So lifelong friends from this area. I'm still an introvert and I still get good grades. I just get good grades at performing memory demonstrations now.
Well, let's talk about that in a bit. Beyond your amazing skills and memory and being the champion you are, you're also amazing by serving our great country. Can you tell us about that? What was that catalyst for your service? I see some of the objects behind you there on your shelves. Tell us about your service and what brought that about, and a little bit about your own experience.
So one of my lifelong friends that I mentioned, his name's Brian. I met him when I was 11 years old. When Brian and I, we were both 28 years old when 9/11 happened. And I had been teaching memory seminars for a decade at that point. I started when I was 18. He was a high school teacher, and he still is. And we were sitting on his couch maybe just not long after 9/11. When I say not long, 8-10 weeks after 9/11. And he said to me, man, don't laugh, but I've been talking to a recruiter for the Army. And as a response to September 11th, I'm going to join the Army tomorrow. I mean, he was already weeks into the process and had kept it a secret. And it was instantaneous for me. I mean, I did not even think, should I do this too? I just said, dude, I'm going with you. We went down to the recruiting station the next day as a response to September 11th, and he joined the Army. I joined the Navy because I'm smarter. And we both served for 8 years as reservists. So he kept being a high school teacher for the next 8 years, except 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. I kept being a memory expert, except 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. And then in 2005, he was deployed to Afghanistan. He came back. He's fine. In 2007, I was deployed to Afghanistan, almost to the exact same base, but about 90 miles away. And that's my service. We both got out in 2010.
God bless you for your patriotism and certainly for your service. We're all so fortunate to have individuals like you in our lives. So thank you for that, Ron. You shared with the audience that before you entered the reserves, when you were only 28 years old, you actually joined this memory career skill set contest. What was the catalyst you saying, hey, I want to become an expert in that field of memorization? What was it?
Well, there was two catalysts. And you know what? It's so crazy that this story is also going to start off with Brian. But at the age of 18, I was 4 weeks out of high school. He said to me, dude, I got this job as a telemarketer at a company that cleans chimneys. Do you want a job? Do you want to work with us? I'm like, yeah, man, I need a job. So I went to work for a company that cleaned chimneys as a telemarketer. And on my first or second week there, I called a guy, tried to sell him on getting his chimney cleaned. He said, I don't want my chimney cleaned, but you're a great telemarketer. Will you go to work for me? He said, I sell memory seminars and I'll pay you more than you're making now, which was a pretty safe thing to say. And I went to work for him the next day, and that was 1991. So it's been over 28 years. Now, there's another question in what you asked, and when did you decide to become a memory expert? I worked for him for a year, and then I started my own company, and I was in the business for 8 or 9 years before I ever decided to truly become an expert. Before I decided I wanted to be the guy breaking records, winning tournaments, doing these massive memory demonstrations. I'd say the first 8 years or 9 years or so, I was just a guy who owned a business and was a salesman. I was a salesman and my product was memory.
Unbelievable. So what was that first company like? Because our audience, they're company owners as well. So yeah, it's scary. And you're not even 20 years old. And maybe you out there in the audience, maybe you're in your early 20s and you're about to start your own company. So Ron, what was it like?
If I would have known what I knew now about what it takes to start a business at 19, I never would have done it. I thought I'll go down to the courthouse, I'll register a company name, then I'll take that piece of paper, I'll go to the bank and I'll get a bank account set up in that name. And then instead of me taking the money and giving it to my boss, I'll just take all the money. This is the greatest idea in the world. And in a way, it was a great idea, but it was so much harder than I had anticipated. I never anticipated going broke and living in my car for 4 weeks, or I never anticipated waking up and owing the IRS $150,000 and having $100 in the bank account. These were different times. If I had known what I know now, but I fought through it, I battled through it, and I'm very happy with where I am now.
Certainly, you've had even more extreme challenges than most. You just shared that with us. Living in the car, the IRS liens, one for $50,000. What were some of the key launch pads, some of the key jobs for you and your business when you're starting to build this business of your dreams? What were the events or lessons that allowed you to continue to build your business? Heck, it's almost been 30 years now. It's amazing being in any business for that long. What are some of the things that you found along this journey?
One of the lessons I learned was when I was 24 years old, I was out playing pool one night and I thought I was a Rockefeller because I just made $20,000 that month. So I was just telling the guy I was playing pool with, man, yeah, I just made so much money. I made 20 grand this month. I'm only 24 years old, blah, blah, blah. He listened to me talk for a couple of days. We kept playing pool. And then he announced to me that he was a multi-millionaire owner of restaurants all across the country and friends with the higher ups at Microsoft and all this stuff, which was all a lie. He turns out he was a con artist. He got $1 million from an insurance company and $400,000 from a bank in Connecticut. He was a high-level con artist. I didn't have as much money as he thought I did, or as I thought I did, because he wouldn't have spent much time with me in the con if he thought that. But after he did his con job on me, that's what led me to being homeless for that time period. And looking back on it, I realized, man, why did I give him so much control over my business? And it was because I really just didn't trust myself. I had no confidence in my ability to run my business. So this guy came along and I gave him all the reins. Just take my business, make my business successful. I can't do it. You do it. And instead, I gave him the keys to my bank account, and he just took it and left. So the lesson I learned from that was just to learn to trust myself more. When I meet somebody, I've had business partners, and there's nothing wrong with business partners, but also trust myself. Am I looking at this business partner because he has strengths that I don't have, which is totally fine? Or am I doing it because I don't have any confidence in myself? And at the time, I didn't have any confidence in myself. I'd say that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned, one of the first that comes off the top of my head.
Okay, fantastic. Now, before we go to break, let me ask you one more question. And that's this. Looking back beyond the championships and the rewards, from a business perspective, what was one of your business successes? What would it have been?
One of the things that's contributed most to my business success, in the late 90s, I contacted a guy named Billy Burden. He owned a company called Memory Masters. This was in the late 90s. I guess I was 25 years old. I said, I've been in the business about 6 or 7 years now. You were a legend. He was probably 70 years at the time. I said, I know it's difficult when a competitor asks you for advice, but would you give me advice? And he was retired from it at the time. He said, Ron, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is create some sort of, there was no video products then. It was all cassettes. He said, because create a cassette program where people can buy that from you at the end of your speeches. And that's really all he said. He had no idea about the internet or stuff like that. But I created a cassette course in 1998. And that opened up so many doors for me. There was a speaker at the time called Jim Rohn. The owner of Jim Rohn International is Kyle Wilson. Kyle is one of my best friends today. Matter of fact, I expect to be getting a text from him any minute, so I put my phone in the other room. He's one of my closest friends. But that relationship developed out of me having a cassette program that he could sell. And today, I wake up every morning and I check my sales for what I sold while I was sleeping. But it all comes back to duplicating myself and having a product. And that moment, 21 years ago, I'd say changed my business and mindset.
Well, that is absolutely awesome. And when we come back to the second session with the one and only Ron White, we're going to talk about memory specifically and some of those skills. He'll demonstrate some of those skills for you and then give you some lessons that you can apply these memory skills and grow your own memory in your personal and or professional perspective. Let's face it, we all meet hundreds of people every year and we say, okay, who's that person again? Hey, we just can't get it. We're going to figure out how. So stay tuned for us here at the Massimo Show, and we'll be back with the one and only Ron White. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo, and we always tell our coaching clients that knowing isn't doing. That's right. Don't kid yourself. In fact, in my new book, Don't Kid Yourself, Knowing Isn't Doing, Build the Business and Life You Desire, I lay out many of our Massimo methods that we share with our clients to help them transform their lives. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing, is going through a soft launch that will happen in March of 2020, and then a big national launch in September 2020. For more information, check out knowingisn'tdoing.com. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome back to the Massimo Show with Ron White, the two-time U.S. memory champion. So let's get right back into it. Okay, Ron, you ready to go?
That's fine, yes.
Okay, I want to test your memory. So during the break, Ron challenged me to think of 10 two-digit numbers. He hasn't seen these numbers, and I just wrote them down. And I said, okay, let's see how this goes. So, Ron, I'm going to give you those 10 numbers between 0 and 99. And then I'm going to ask you to repeat those back to me. Is that fair?
Okay.
So here are those 10 numbers that I've written down. 12.
Okay, got it.
28.
Okay, got it.
43.
Okay, got it.
72.
All right, got it.
5.
Got it.
14.
Got it.
63.
Got it.
84.
Got it.
31.
Got it.
And 3.
And the number 3? Okay. All right. So there's one that I'm confused on, but you'll correct me if I get it wrong. 1-2-2-8-4-3-7-2-5-1-4-6-3-8-4-3-1-3.
Wow. You nailed it, Ron. Absolutely nailed it. That is incredible. Now, I know that this was a small sample of the work that you normally do. But Ron, now help us out. When you say you were the champion, what's the metric for being a champion? How do you compete? Tell us what that looks like.
The tournament started for me in about 2005. I was looking at AOL.com or some website like that, Yahoo maybe, and I saw this news article of a memory tournament. And they were like, this guy memorized a deck of cards in 2 minutes and a 100-digit number in 5 minutes. And I was like, what? There's no way. And then I started getting a little irritated because I realized in my speeches, people are introducing me as one of the top memory experts in the world. And I'm like, what have I ever done to prove that? These guys in this tournament are clearly outperforming me, and they're not giving speeches. They got no credentials. So I told myself, you know what? You've either got to go start competing with these guys and beating them, or you need to take that out of your bio that you're one of the top in the world, because that's just not really congruent. So I competed in my first tournament in 2008. I had been back from Afghanistan about 8 weeks, and I came in 4th place. And then in 2009, I won the national tournament for the first time. And essentially, it's a series of 7 events. The first event, they give you names and faces, pictures of faces and the names underneath, and they take the papers away, and the faces are all jumbled up, and there's no names, and you've got to write out the name. My best time for that, I've memorized 155 names in 15 minutes. The second event is how many numbers can you memorize in 5 minutes? They'll give you a piece of paper with 500 digits on it, and you'll look at it. They'll take it away. They'll give you another piece of paper, and you write down as many consecutive as you can until you make your first mistake. Held the record for that for 1 year. I did 167 digits in 5 minutes. The next event is a deck of cards, which was my favorite. It's everybody's favorite. They give you a deck of cards. You memorize it real quick. You give that deck away. You take another deck. Then you reassemble that deck to match the first deck. I held the record for that for 2 years. I memorized a deck of cards in 1 minute, 27 seconds. Today in 2020, it sounds great to the layperson, the person who's never been in a memory tournament. And actually, it still is great for me. That's still a good time for me. But in 2020, the record is 19 seconds. So it's insane. So it's a full minute faster than what I did. That's the tournament. It's just a series of events like that. And for 2 years in a row, I came in first place. And then the next 2 years, I came in second place. And then essentially I retired in 2013. I went back in 2018 just for fun, and I came in 4th place, and I was extremely happy with that because I am 20 years older than these guys. I had only trained for a week. I was fractions of a point away from becoming the 3rd place bronze medal finalist. So I was very happy.
That is so impressive. Wow. What an accomplishment. So the audience is no doubt asking, how did he do that? Now, we're going to talk about how to get access to you and your materials in a little bit. But right now, let's think of this from a personal perspective, because I think that's the most applicable. Not the deck of cards and not the numbers, the faces and names, certainly. And Ron, you may not agree, but I think that's the most applicable to our daily lives. Is that an accurate statement?
It's something that I'm working on right now. On my recently, I said, hey, guys, learn 2 new names a week. I mean, I'm really dumbing down, and I hate to use that word, but I'm really lowering the bar of expectations here. Let's say there's 2 people out there that you don't know their names right now, but you're going to meet them this week. You'll meet 2 people, new people. So get yourself a journal for 2020, your name journal, and do 2 a week. If you memorize 2 new people a week, this time next year, you'll have 100 names that you did not know at the beginning of the year. 100 people, if you saw them on the street, you could call them by their name. That's big. That's going to mean more networking opportunities, more referrals, more chances to grow your business. That's huge. And it compounds 2 a week. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. The next question is how do you do it? And the way that you do it is to remember anything, you need a picture for it. Probably everybody listening to this right now, they have met somebody and then 3 weeks later been at a baseball game and they've said to themselves, oh, I know that person. I met that person at Rod's house. I can't think of their name right now. You remember where you met them and you remember their face because you saw these things. They were images. You don't remember their name because you never saw the name. So the key is to see the name with the face. But this has to take place in your imagination. So you meet somebody named Rod. I think of a metal rod, like a rod. Then I look at your face and I ask myself, what stands out to me on this guy's face? Because whatever stands out to me on his face, that's where I'm going to center the action. Your hair stands out because you've got about 80% more than I do. And that's what catches my eye. So I got a metal rod and maybe I'm swinging like a baseball bat over the top of your head. Now, let's say your name was Steve and let's say you had big ears. You don't, but let's say you had big ears. I would think Steve Stove, and I would cook your ears in my imagination in that stove. Then in 2 weeks, we're at the baseball game. And I don't say, what's that guy's name? Instead, I ask myself, what stood out to me on his face? Oh, yeah, it was his hair. What was in his hair? A metal rod. Or what stood out to me on his face? Oh, it was his ears. What was in his ears? A stove. Steve. As I wrap this part up here, it's a process of seeing pictures and then placing those pictures on the face. Now, here's the hard part. This is without question the hardest part of what I'm telling you right now. I walked into a speech in 1992. I was 19 years old. I said, hey, my name is Ron. I'm the memory guy. I'm with the Memory Institute. And they said, oh, okay, Ron, when the speaker gets here, let us know and we'll all go in together. I'm like, no, I'm the speaker. And they were like, are you out of high school yet? I'm like, yeah, as a matter of fact, in 8 months, it'll be a year or whatever, something like that. But anyways, I walked into that meeting today. I'll never forget it. There was 5 people, and I only asked 3 people their names because I did not think I had the ability to memorize all 5 names. Fast forward to 2020, this Thursday, I'm giving a speech for 200 people. The organizer emailed me yesterday, and they said, Ron, can you memorize all 200 names? We're not going to have that many opportunities for you to meet everybody. And in essence, I said, I don't drink anymore, but I said, hold my beer. I got this. Now, what makes the leap from not being able to remember any names to being able to remember 200 in, I don't even know how much time they're going to give me, but however much time they give me, I'm going to get it. What makes that leap? This is what makes that leap. And this will be my final point on this as I've gone on a monologue here.
Great.
The key to it is, this is what I would want all your listeners to do. Today, when you meet somebody, turn their name into a picture. Steve Stove. Tomorrow, when you meet somebody, turn their name into a picture. Bill, dollar bill. The next day you meet somebody, turn their name into a picture. Lisa, Mona Lisa. Now, here's the key. Every time you meet a Lisa, Bill, or Steve from this point forward, use that same picture. So what I'm saying is this process might take a month or 6 weeks or 2 months to get pictures for common names. But if you're willing to go through that 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks process, you will be phenomenal with names for the rest of your life. If you're not willing to go through that 4 to 6 to 8 weeks process, you're going to be exactly where you are right now in a year.
That's incredible. I'm just thinking to myself, how much application to me personally this will have. Yeah, when I'm giving a speech or going to conferences, we're blessed. We have hundreds of active clients at any given time across North America. Thousands during our tenure. In fact, now we have clients across the world. And when I'm at these conferences or giving a speech, people will come up to me and say, hey, Rod, how are you? And in my head, I'm saying, who are you? I have no idea who they are. And worse, they may be clients of ours, which is very embarrassing. So I can see the application of taking the faces of names and all that. That's incredible. Just everyday stuff. You rolled your eyes, you said, hey, you're turning 50. Heck, I'm on the closer side to 60. Yet my wife continues to tell me, hey, Rod, I'm worried about your memory. You just can't remember names. Now I can go back to my wife and say, hey, test me. I got it. Not now, but 8 weeks from now, I can possibly go back and say, I remember names. So we're going to be closing out here. And this, Ron, this has been tremendous. And before we close out, you mentioned that you had a chance to reach out to a competitor. That's a great lesson, though. Everyone reaching out to competitors. But also, that person was a legend in your industry. I'm going to share with you a story that actually happened to me last night. And I'm not here to embarrass you, Ron, but let me share with you something. I have a bad back and I'm taking therapy every week. And so last night I'm in therapy for my back, and my therapist, who I've known for many years, he has this amazing memory. He does exactly what you were talking about. Imagery and names and everything you shared. So I shared with him that tomorrow I was doing this podcast with this 2-time U.S. memory champion. And before I finished, he said, oh, you're talking to Ron White? He was so excited. So Ron, you've become the legend amongst your peers. That once you looked up to, that has become you. And that is pretty awesome.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, and that means a lot to me to hear, because I think every business person works really hard, and you see the sales come through your website, so you know people are buying your products, and you see the YouTube views, but I think there's always that doubt in the back of your mind, am I really making a difference? So I appreciate that story more than you know.
Ron, before I let you go, I want to share another story about you. And this one was really close to my heart, especially in this time that we're recording this session and not being sure where the world is going. We have this issue of service and this idea of never forget, this patriotism of never forget. For a lot of folks, that's sort of a broad statement. But for you, you found a way to mesh the two. First, your service, and then your amazing talents, your skills of memory. Can you share with us about the wall and the tour?
Yeah, so I got the record for the fastest to memorize a deck of cards in 2009. That record was broken in 2011 by a freak of nature. And then and I'm joking when I say that, he's a good friend. And then I started thinking, what do I want to do next? You know what? I'm a guy who's goal-driven and achievement-driven. And so I know I just didn't want to sit on my hands and say, all right, I got the records. That was good. My time's over. My thought was, what do I want to do next? And around that same time, somebody asked me, how long would it take you to memorize the Vietnam Wall, which is about 60-something thousand people? And I gave my answer. And then time went by, and I was thinking of that one more time, a couple months after that. I was thinking of their question. How long would it take me to memorize the Vietnam Wall? And then a switch just flipped in my brain. It was like, dude, you served in Afghanistan. Don't do Vietnam, do Afghanistan. So I printed out everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan. There was 1,853 at the time. This was back in 2012. Now there's over 2,400. So we've lost over 500 since I started the project. But I printed out everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan in the order of their death. And then I set out to memorize them. Rank, first name, last name. At first I thought, well, maybe I'll just memorize their first and their last names to make it easier. I won't do the rank. That'll save me 2,400 words. And I thought, no, you can't do that. This is a military wall. You have to write their ranks. I was like, oh, dang it. And then I thought, I'll memorize their rank and their last names. That'll eliminate first names. It'll make it 2,400 less first names. And then I realized you can't do that. The last name is their family, but this is what makes an individual their first name. So there was no way around it. I had to do rank, first name, last name. It's about 7,500 words. It took me a month to memorize. And now I travel around the United States with the wall. It's 52 feet long. It's 8 feet high. It looks like the Vietnam Wall, and I will write it out from memory. It takes me 10 hours to write it out. Imagine you're at the Vietnam Wall and you're watching someone write out the Vietnam Wall, but they're doing it all from memory. That's exactly what I do, but I do it from Afghanistan. I've done it at Major League Baseball games, NASCAR races. I've done it in front of the Washington Monument of the Mall, Fox and Friends morning show 3 times. So it's a tribute to this, to keep their memory alive, to honor them, to say you are remembered, we honor you, we haven't forgotten you. And inevitably, somebody will walk by that wall. I've done it 30 times. Somebody will be walking down the street, or they'll be walking at the NASCAR race, or they'll be wherever, and they'll say, what is this? We'll tell them instantly. Tears will fill their eyes. And they'll say, and this happened in San Antonio, they'll say, oh my gosh, is Darrell Lewis on that wall? And I'm like, yes, ma'am, he is. He was a captain. He's number 409. And I show him their name. And I say, how do you know him? I mean, this really happened. And she said, I'm his widow. And she was just stood there at the wall crying. On the East Coast, I believe it was in Maryland, a guy walked by the wall and he said, is Kyle Van de Giesen on the wall? I said, yes, sir, he is. He was a captain. He's number 900. I believe he was a helicopter pilot. And he started crying and he said, he was my son. And I will say this to say this. Every time somebody's walked by that wall, and 3 seconds later, they were crying, not knowing they were about to see the wall. And what that shows me is that everybody we meet walking around in society every day is carrying something inside of them that if it's brought up in 3 seconds, they're going to start crying. Because it happens every time I do this wall. So it's made me a more compassionate person to people, realizing that everybody has got a bag on their shoulders that could just probably break them down in a minute. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned from the Afghanistan wall.
That is incredible. Simply incredible. Ron, you are an amazing individual. Beyond your memory, just to say the least, how you leverage your skills and talents to serve others is amazing. If people want to get know more about you, if people certainly want to find out how they can do better with their own personal lives, with their own memories, how do we connect with you? How do people get access to your tools, your platform, your products?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, Brian, I did mention him twice in this podcast. We were sitting around and we had a guy who was great at speed math, could do math in his head. And he said to this guy, Scott Flansburgh's his name. So he's been on some TV shows for math. Brian is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He does jiu-jitsu. He said, Scott, you are a black belt in math. He said, I'm one day going to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And Ron, you're a black belt in memory. And then Scott turned to me and said, Ron, that's the name of your new course, Black Belt Memory. And I said, oh my gosh, that's it. So I registered blackbeltmemory.com, and people can go there and they can learn memory skills and then take little quizzes and earn their yellow and orange and brown and green all the way up to working up to a black belt in memory. It's fun. It's like a game, but like you mentioned, it's more about business skills, being able to remember names or give speeches without notes or remember product knowledge or information on your listings or whatever if you're in real estate, stuff like that.
Awesome, Ron. Absolutely awesome. Black Belt Memory. Everyone needs to check that out. Sir, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing with us ways to improve our memory. And more than anything else, thank you for your service and what you continue to do to make sure that we all never forget. The one and only Ron White. Thank you so much for being part of this Massimo Show.
Hey, thank you for having me on. It was a ton of fun, and I'm glad our friend made the connection.
Okay, everyone. I hope that you agree with me on what an amazing show this has been. Please share this show. Your colleagues will want to learn about Ron and his products and his platform, and certainly his skill set, and more importantly, his story should be shared with everyone. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And remember, knowing isn't doing. So let's keep doing. Let's keep moving forward. Take care. I want to thank you for listening to this version of the Massimo Show. And please, please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, president and founder of the Massimo Group. And did you know that for over the past 11 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners just like you in repositioning their and or their team's efforts so they can build the personal, professional practice they've always dreamed of. We provide coaching programs for all levels of experience, earnings, and yes, success. So if you're finally ready to get off that transaction treadmill and chasing deals that are growing nowhere and start building the personal, professional business and life consisting of greater wealth and more time, well, check us out at Massimo.coach. That's Massimo.